My hope is that if someone like me, a former NICU nurse who once believed home birth should be illegal, can reclaim the rite of passage of childbirth and become a fierce advocate for home births, that more women realize their strength, their power, their sacred blessing, and also reclaim their own birth. Once we realize how capable our bodies are, our strength, we'll have the confidence to stand in this power, our intuition, our innate wisdom, and confidently raise our children, trusting in our ability to care and nurture them without external validation. We're all they need, and when we step into the wisdom of wise women, it's not just reclaiming birth, it's reclaiming motherhood. It's reclaiming ourselves as women and how we've been fearfully and wonderfully created, glorifying His name and our perfect divine design.
So let's talk about the labor funnel. This is the actual real problem. 100%. The pain is, they tell you it's the pain. This is the problem. So really quickly, guys, I'll run through the labor funnel. This is something I've been teaching on for years, but we have in this purple-ish triangle here, obstacles, right? So these are typical tripping points into the labor funnel: hitting your due date, premature rupture of membranes, slow dilation, long early labor, baby malposition. In my program, we talk about 12 other obstacles. So there's many different ways that they can trip women into the labor funnel. Then we're getting induced, typically induced, sometimes augmented if we're in a slow early labor, with Pitocin. Now, Pitocin is a synthetic version of your own natural oxytocin. It's synthetic, so it's more concentrated, more potent. You're having these long, strong, difficult contractions that are coming on like a freight train, so the vast majority of women are like, oh my God, give me the epidural right away. But that slows those contractions back down. So then, because she has an epidural, they're good to give her more Pitocin. But then, even if that's where the hospital wants these contractions to be, that's not where Mother Nature designed labor to be for a long period of time. So these babies are being exposed to these really long, really difficult contractions without much of a break in between, causes baby's heart rate to drop. Now we have a medical emergency, everybody's panicking, flying around the labor and delivery room, oh my God, we gotta get this baby out right away. We're looking at an instrumental intervention like vacuum forceps episiotomy, or a cesarean, or an emergency cesarean where mom is completely sedated for the birth of her baby. Now, all of these will then lead to a more difficult postpartum and breastfeeding experience. And that's not what we want for new moms, it's not what we want for new babies, right? We can do better than this. All of this just for the monetization of the medical system.
My time at Chiwoko was very formative for me. It was there that I saw my first birth. It was the mom, it was the nurse, and it was me. And she had me do this weird maneuver where I had to like pull on the umbilical cord and like traction it to pull out the placenta, which I learned later is very bad. Don't do that. But that was my first birth, and it was amazing. Really interesting with that birth is that the mother didn't actually cry out in pain or make a sound at all, because in their culture, it's a sign of weakness. So the moms don't make a sound. And every time I would go into the birthing, like room, which was 2 beds divided by a curtain, there would be this new baby on like a little warming plate next to the sink where I washed my hands, and I didn't even realize anyone was having a baby in there. It was also at Chiwoko Hospital where I learned that pelvic physiotherapy was a thing, and it was also there where I understood the realities that stand against women and their thriving in this life. And trust me when I say that that is not an Africa problem, that is not a Uganda problem, that is a problem in every country in the world, including Canada. We need to learn the truth, we need to learn the facts, we need to learn the unbiased research evidence that's out there. We need to learn from people when they share their birth stories with us, okay? We need to learn people's lived experiences and understand the wide range of possibility when it comes to birth. And we need to get educated. So since we're talking about pelvic health, I'm gonna share a little bit about the pelvic floor, just a little mini lesson for those of you who might not be that familiar. This is gonna be very quick, okay? I'm gonna pass out my pelvic floor models here. Don't love the term pelvic floor because it's not flat like a floor. It's actually shaped like a bowl, okay? And it is the set of muscles that lives at the bottom of the pelvis. So in this image here, you can see someone who's been sliced in half. The pelvic floor is at the bottom, and the diaphragm muscle lives above that, right underneath the rib cage. Those two muscles can be almost thought about as opposite muscles, right? We've got our biceps and triceps, we've got our quads and our hamstrings, we've got the pelvic floor and the diaphragm, and they work together synergistically.
This is my treasure. This is the book that changed the Ladies' Home Journal that changed everything in 1958. Have you heard of, anybody heard of this? Billy has, I know that. So a nurse wrote to the Ladies' Home Journal and she said, this is really appalling what's happening in hospitals today, that the fathers were not allowed and they would not permit things to happen if they were allowed. This magazine sold way more copies than any others had, and if I was really bright, I would have got those statistics for you. And thank God and eBay that I have a copy of that original magazine. Another one of my treasures are just going to bookstores. I found this Memoirs of a Canadian Doctor. This was in Cape Breton Island. He just tells stories in there, and you read his stories about 15-pound babies being born at home. He said he was 100 miles from the nearest hospital quite often. Another little treasure I find is just a book of emergency childbirth. And why is that, you say? Because it's only 60 pages long. That's all you need to know. William's got a lot of stuff that's irrelevant to most of us. My mother was a British midwife, came to Canada in 1956. And I remember my mother telling stories about being a nurse and then becoming a midwife. And she said when she came to Canada, she tried to get a job in the local hospital as a midwife. Of course, midwives were not legally recognized. And my mom said she became an obstetric nurse. And I found it really interesting. She said when she was in Scotland, she said, if a mom came in and had to have a forceps and episiotomy, she was nursed flat for 24 hours. Come to Canada, all the babies were born with episiotomy and forceps, and if one gave birth spontaneously, they were nursed flat for 24 hours.
Oh, this was nothing like I've ever seen before. I have never seen so much cognitive dissonance in my life. And partly me being one of those people, because you're in the trauma, and they saved them. And you were a med student, and you were gonna save them too, so everyone's saving each other. Wow, these mothers need saving. Thank goodness you're in the hospital. So, 3 years goes by, you're doing hospital births, you're seeing the hemorrhages, you're seeing the fingering, you're seeing the C-sections, you're seeing the rape, you're seeing the coercion, you're seeing the manipulation, you're seeing the assault, you're seeing the breastfeeding rates are terrible. You're seeing the mothers in PTSD for years. I saw my mother in PTSD. So it was like, wow, this is what we're up against? This doesn't look great. This doesn't look fun. Why I do this? Because I'm disgusted with the system. I'm disgusted with how women are being treated. I'm disgusted with how much silence there has been. Me going public is what brought a lot of people close to me, and I can't believe how many women I met, how many people we worked with after, how many births we had. I made a list of all the births we had successful since meeting Billy, because I feel like that was the catalyst, my birth rites of passage. That was my birthright of passage, seeing a birth with this beautiful woman and realizing how wrong I have been for so long and how I'm ready to do the right thing.
Birth is a finely tuned concert of hormones, because birth is actually a hormonal process that has a physical outcome. And it is a concert between the mother and the baby. Between the two of them, they have this intricate, beautiful, finely tuned symphony that comes together in perfect orchestration. Birth is music. But in order for this hormonal process to work, you gotta have some receptors. Without the receptors, these hormones aren't going to do anything. It's much like saying you want to create a symphony by bringing in all the violin bows. You can have as many bows as you want, you're not gonna get music until you have a violin. The receptors are the violin. the bow hits the violin, and the music begins. So, what is the final switch that triggers labor? It comes from the baby. It is the baby, we believe at the moment, it is the baby's lungs. The baby's lungs secrete a protein that says, hey, Ma, I can breathe. We can do this. The baby releases that from their lungs, message through the amniotic fluid to the placenta. In other words, it is the baby that tells the conductor to lift the baton and to commence the symphony. Anything before that disables all of the safety mechanisms that are built into birth. Okay, we've got our pelvis here, about the size of a 11-year-old girl. And our baby here, maybe 2/3 the size of a normal baby. If I can get this doll through this pelvis, y'all can get a pony out of yours. Okay, the top of the pelvis is called the inlet. Very clever name, because the baby goes in there. The bottom is called the outlet, because the baby comes out. At the top of the pelvis, you will notice it is wider side to side than front to back. And when a woman is not on her back, at the outlet, it is wider front to back than side to side. Let's take a look at little Pookie here. Pookie's head is longer front to back than side to side, and its shoulders are wider side to side than front to back. This is a musical symphony between two people. This is not a passive bystander that gets shot out. This little one is fully participating in this symphony, in this gorgeous concert. So at some point in pregnancy, little Wilgums will end up down there. And as soon as, if you're palpating, you can feel the top of the belly, you feel the little tushy, you might feel the little butt cheeks. Nana always likes to give them a little back rub in there. Heading down, you can find shoulders, neck, and as soon as you are stopping at the neck and don't really feel any head, we now say the baby is engaged. In labor, baby will line up, so we've got the longest part of the head at the widest part of the pelvis, and the baby is most often back on the left side. It's the most direct route out. It doesn't have to be, but it's the most common. Now mama's pushing. Get that kid down there. And we're working hard. And as soon as baby gets down to a certain part, we've got a mismatch. We've got the wide shoulders at the narrow part of the pelvis. Clever little one rotates so it matches and continues to come down.